All right, welcome to more good times. So, on chapter 16, which is more story based, which is great. So, next part is putting out a fire with a cache and intelligent instrumentation. At a sports social network where I was CTO, we were experiencing substantial problems with the performance from our relational database. We started to reach the limits of vertical scaling. We were running the biggest version of SQL Server that Amazon RDS, Amazon's managed relational database service, provided. To make things worse, we couldn't easily switch to horizontal scaling because at that time, SQL Server didn't integrate read slaves into RDS. Not sure what that means. There are many ways to solve a crisis like this. One method could have involved rewriting key queries, but we were experiencing so much traffic and a shortage of engineers that we had to get creative. One of our DevOps centric engineers came up with a critical solution by doing the following: added more instrumentation via an APM that traced the time SQL calls took and mapped those to routes. Added Nginx as a cache to read-only routes. Load tested this solution in a dedicated staging environment. This engineer saved our bacon, and he implemented the solution through minimal modifications to the application. It dramatically increased our performance and allowed us to eventually scale to millions of monthly users, becoming one of the largest sports sites in the world. DevOps principles aren't just important in the abstract. They can figuratively saving you from drowning in a sea of deliberate technical debt. You'll automate yourself out of a job. In my early 20s, I got a job at one of the top film studios in the world and was pretty excited to use my combination of skills in video, film, programming, and IT. It was also a unicorn job, which I had never experienced before working in technology. Oh, sorry, it was a union job. Okay. The upside of a union job was that it had incredible benefits and pay, but I later discovered there were some downsides involving automation. After working there for a couple of months, I realized that one of my tasks was pretty silly. I would walk around the film studio on a Saturday for overtime pay, place a CD into high-end editing systems, and do maintenance. The general premise was a good one: do weekly preventative maintenance so that these expensive machines would have minimal downtime during the week. The implementation was flawed, though. Why would I do anything manually if I could automate it? After all, it was a computer. Also, you could probably set up like SSH to it and not have to walk around. Although walking around is good physical exercise. After my second Saturday doing maintenance, I constructed a secret plan to automate my job. Because it was a union job, I had to be a bit careful though and keep it secret until I had validated that it would work. If I asked for permission, you could forget about it. I first wrote down a series of steps that were necessary to automate this. Number one, connect the OS X machines to the company LDAP servers. This would allow multiple users and allow me to mount NFS home directories. Number two, reverse engineer the editing software to let multiple users access the software. I had applied group level permissions to several lists to hack it, allowing various users to use the same machine. Number 3, create an image of the software in the state I would want it to install. Number 4, write a script named netboot. For example, boot the machine from a network operating system, and then re-image the machines. Once I got this sorted out, I was able to walk over to any machine, reboot it, and hold down the N key. Then it wholly re-imaged the software and still preserved user data because it was on the network. It took 3.5 to 5 minutes to completely reinstall the entire machine because of the fast system and because I was doing block level copying. In my first test run, I was able to complete my maintenance in 30 minutes. The only bottleneck was walking over to the machines and rebooting them while holding down the N key. Additionally, I then told the film editors first to try restoring their machines by resetting them and holding the N key, and this eliminated support calls dramatically. Yikes, my job and my whole department's job got way more manageable. This automation wasn't entirely good at the union shop. Soon, an older union worker pulled me into a surprise meeting with my boss. He was unhappy with what I did. The meeting ended with him screaming at me while pointing a finger at me and saying, "You will script yourself out of a job, kid." The boss's boss was also unhappy. He had advocated to management for months to get a maintenance team approved, and then I wrote a script that eliminated much of what our department did. He also yelled at me profusely. The word spread, and everyone liked the new automated process, including the stars and the film editors. I did not get fired because of this. Later, word spread about what I was doing, and I did script myself out of a job. I got recruited to work at Sony ImageWorks and was hired to do what I almost got fired for doing. It was a fun job, too. I got to play basketball at lunch with Adam Sandler and the cast of his movies quite frequently. So, yes, you can automate yourself out of a job and right into a better one. I will say this author seems to have X factor though. Like he's constantly like surrounded by celebrities, it seems like. Like my first like thought when I read this is not, oh, well, I guess I don't have to worry because now I'll just be playing basketball with movie stars all day. It's like there's something this author is not saying that is like, you know, causing all of this good luck. Because I feel like if it was me or if it was someone watching this, like the result would not be, you know, you just get fired. Like you wouldn't be playing basketball with Adam Sandler. There's something about this author that he's got some kind of X factor, it seems like. All right, so DevOps anti-patterns. Let's dive into some clear examples of what not to do. It is often much easier to learn from mistakes than to learn from perfection. This section dives into many horror stories and anti-patterns to avoid. No automated build server anti-pattern. It never ceased to amaze me how many troubled projects or companies had no build server. This fact is perhaps the most significant red flag that exists for a software company. If your software isn't put through a build server, you can pretty much guarantee minimal other forms of automation are occurring. This problem is a canary in the coal mine. Build servers are a foundational piece that must be in place to ensure you can reliably deliver software. Often the first thing I would do in a crisis would be to immediately set up a build server. Just running code through Pylint makes things better quickly. Somewhat related to this is the almost working build server. It is shocking how some organizations do the same thing they do with DevOps and say, this isn't my job, that is the build engineer. This dismissive attitude, just like the attitude of, this is not my job, this is DevOps, is cancer. Every job in automation is your job if you work in a software company. There is no more critical or virtuous task than making sure things are automated. It is frankly ridiculous to say automation tasks are not your job. Shame on anyone who says this. Flying blind. Are you logging your code? If you are not, why? Do you drive your car without headlights too? Application visibility is another problem that is quite easy to remedy. For production software, it is technically possible to have too much logging, but more often than not in a troubled project, there is zero. For distributed systems, it is critical to have it logged. No matter how skilled the developers, no matter how simple the problem, no matter how good the operations team, you need logging. If you don't include logging in your application, your project is dead on arrival. Difficulties in coordination as an ongoing accomplishment. Some of the difficulties in working in DevOps teams is the status differences among the co-founder, CTO, and co-founder, CEO, and other members of the group. This conflict causes coordination difficulties in getting a more reliable infrastructure, better instrumentation, proper backups, testing and QA, and ultimate resolution of any ongoing stability crisis. Another ordinary organization dynamic is that erodes the integrating conditions and causes coordination breakdowns is status differences in groups. Because high status groups may feel no need to recognize the task contributions of members of low status groups. For example, MetaU shows how in software production, high status programmers refuse to read the notes and comments that low status programmers provide to document the progress of work, because accountability requires an acknowledgement of mutual responsibilities. Status differences that prevent such acknowledgement limit the development of liability. In situations where substantial status differences exist, members of groups may not be able to trust one another. When working interdependently, low status individuals in these situations will ask fewer questions and give less feedback for fear of offending others and possible repercussions. Such a situation leads to less sharing of knowledge, limiting common understanding in the group. In organizational behavior, there is a concept called closure. Closure is defined as the act of monopolizing goods or opportunities based on status. According to MetaU, a typical high-status group of software developers will use the following techniques to practice closure, which is the act of monopolizing goods or opportunities based on status. So, lack of interaction, use of geographical distance or proximity. Yeah, in case of an office. Non-use of work, criticism, code ownership transfer. So yeah, that happens a lot in they put the desks so that the high level people are on one side of the room, the low level people are on the other side of the room, and they never interact with each other. Having observed interactions inside companies, my belief is that executive management often engages in closure for projects they work on with staff. For example, even though a CTO may ask a DevOps engineer to work on an instrumentation task, the CTO may then refuse to use it. By not using it, it infers the DevOps engineer could never be in the same high status group as the CTO. This behavior is textbook closure, according to research in software development teams by METIU. And I'm going to look that up. I don't know what that is. Is that what it was? METIU? Yeah, METIU. All right. Well, is there any hits on YouTube maybe? I don't know what METIU is. It's a person who has a channel that is not in English. All right. Well, I'm not sure what that is. Okay. This behavior is one of the most substantial challenges to overcome in fixing pervasive problems within engineering in organizations. When a high-status individual owned a component, it has historically not worked until several low-status team members got involved and took joint responsibility. Ooh. These projects included UI, logging, data center, migration, infrastructure, and more. Admittedly, this is a complex problem and not the only factor, but it is a factor with some unknown yet significant weight. If the leadership in an organization is better than other people, you will never implement true DevOps principles. You will be applying highest paid person's opinion principles. I love that. While DevOps can quite literally save lives and save your company, highest paid person opinions are ferocious animals that can and do kill everything in their path. I love that. That's such a good highest paid person opinions. And believe me, that the highest paid person can sometimes be the CEO, and sometimes their opinion can be, sometimes it's their opinion that gets applied. Like a good example, and I'm not speaking to my personal experience, is if a CEO only believes that in-office work is what works, nothing else will do, and then you have a team that's just thriving and doing the best work it's ever done because it's enabled by working remote. Well, the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, which is the CEO, is going to be what happens if your company doesn't have a functioning culture. So that team that was now the most functional it's ever been, not only is going to go back to the way it was, but most of the people on that team are probably going to be like, forget about this. I'm a professional. I have other opportunities. I'm valuable to any organization, not just this one, and they'll choose to move on, and that department will no longer exist, at least not in the same way it was before. All right, so no teamwork. It is ubiquitous at martial arts studios to have the students help mop the floor. There are a lot of obvious reasons for doing this. It shows respect to the instructor, and it teaches students self-discipline. However, there are also some more subtle reasons as well. There is a game theory problem at work here. Being exposed to a staph infection can cause serious health concerns. If you are offered an opportunity to mop the floor at a gym you train at, think very carefully about how you respond. People will watch how well you clean the floor, and if you do it well, they will do it well because they respect you. If you treat it if you treat the task as something beneath you and don't perform it well, you could cause two problems. One, you could have not cleaned the floor well, which could cause other members of the gym to get sick. Two, you could have infected the mindset of others who will in turn not clean the floor. Your actions have actions in the present and the future. So by winning and not mopping the floor correctly, you actually lose because you have played a part in encouraging unsanitary conditions that can be life-threatening. What is the moral of the story? If you train at a martial arts gym regularly and are asked to mop the floor, make sure you do an incredible job with a happy face. Your life could depend on it. Let's look at the same situation at a software company. Many critical tasks fit this same profile. Adding proper logging, creating a continuous deployment of your project, load testing your project, linting your code, or doing a code review. If you show poor attitude or don't complete these tasks, your company may get a life-threatening disease just like staph. Approach and completion both are important. What is the message you are sending to your coworkers? So I really don't relate to this because I think it's basically never a situation of, oh, we need to mop the floor. Here's this procedure of mopping the floor. We know that it works to prevent staph infection. It's just a little bit like cumbersome, and if you don't do it exactly right, then you're creating a precedent that will potentially cause a staph infection. I've never really seen that be the case. Like what I have seen is, okay, we have this we need to not mop the floor, but we need to prevent the mystical, magical evil spirit from possessing us all. So to do that, we have this floor preparation routine. We take a mop, we don't get it wet, we don't even put it on the floor, we wave it around above our heads as we walk around the room, and then we burn sage and we chant a sacred poem, and there's no understanding of what is staph infection, what is germ theory, it's this is kind of like, I've never seen it be the case that people have failed to do something that they've known how to do better and just didn't do it out of laziness or thinking it was beneath them, whatever. Usually what I've seen is just like the basic structure and design of things, like cargo cult is perfect. Like I feel like I've seen a lot of cargo cults, but I really haven't seen a lot of game theoretic situations where people are refusing to do their duties to try to get out of them, even though they know that their duties are going to create a better situation overall. I really don't think I've seen that much. There is an excellent book on teamwork by Larson and LaFast that covers a comprehensive and scientific study of teams. There are 8 characteristics they identified that explain how and why effective teams develop. So yeah, I'm interested in this. This might be another book I read on this channel. I'd really like to read more books on this channel, especially ones with fewer like broken technical examples that like require you to pay on AWS or whatever, only to have it not go well anyway. So whenever I see a book, if I really am interested in it, I'm approved to authorize to buy it. I think books are good, but to read them is good. So definitely need to get it from the library. But I place a lot of value in books, so at the very least, I just keep track of it. All right, so a clear, elevating goal. So there are 8 characteristics they identified that explain how and why effective teams develop. Number 1, a clear, elevating goal. Number 2, a results-driven structure. Number 3, competent team members. Number 4, unified commitment. Number 5, a collaborative climate. Number 6, standards of excellence. Number 7, external support and recognition. Number 8, principled leadership. Let's review some examples of how these have worked or not in organizations. So this is great. I want to save this and include this in the doobly-doo is the technical term. So I'm going to go here, go copy, and then paste in there. Get rid of the there, and then there we go. And then there's some on the prior page as well. All right. Okay, so there's an excellent book on teamwork by Larson and LaFast that covers and I'm gonna change that. So the book. So I'm gonna say the book by Larson and LaFast covers a comprehensive scientific study of teams. Yeah, so I like this. I like this a lot, and I want to remember this. So yeah, you can really think about. You can even think about it in sports. You know, your favorite sports team. Do they want to win the championship or not? Do they make, are they driven by the results, or they just kind of do the same strategy over and over again, even if it doesn't work? Do they have good players on their team? Are they actually working together, or is someone just, a diva all-star that doesn't want to actually commit to coming to practices or whatever? Does someone just hog the ball, or try to do everything themselves and not rely on the support of their teams? Do people actually get, do the people who aren't contributing still get to, still get their minutes or whatever, even though, are there standards of excellence external support and recognition, principled leadership. So, yeah, just on the surface level, it seems pretty believable. Probably have to look into it a bit further, though. That's one of the things I really like to do is evaluate claims and think carefully about claims, because claims are good. If you're talking to somebody that's constantly giving you falsifiable claims, then that's good. That's better than somebody who just gives you vague generalities that are unfalsifiable. Like, that person's not telling you anything at all. But somebody who's telling you a lot of obviously wrong things, but that are stated in a way that's falsifiable, like that's good. That's a good situation to be at. And if that person can change their mind when presented with new evidence, like now you're working with someone who's really a competent person. All right, so a clear, elevating goal. If your organization doesn't have a clear, elevating goal, you're in trouble, full stop. As an engineer, I want the goal to be to make excellent, reliable software that worked. At troubled companies, though, I was told about many goals: going after whales, letting Amazon burn down while we moved to a data center. That sounds familiar to me. Those are people who are AWS cloud deniers, it sounds like. Getting the company sold to X and Y. Yeah, and this is one of those things where, like, it doesn't matter what you believe. You can be absolutely 100% convinced of something, but sometimes you do, even though it feels so wrong. Like, sometimes you just have to do the thing that you're not convinced of, that your gut feeling is telling you is wrong, because that's what all the data says. Like, I think weight loss is maybe a good example of that. It's like, you can't just say, like, oh, I feel like I ate only a few calories today, I'm going to lose weight, when, like, the actual numbers say you ate 10,000 calories today. All right, so a results-driven structure. Is your organization a ROW, or which stands for, I don't know what it stands for, or results-only work experience? Okay, so it stands for results-only work experience. So is your organization a results-only work experience? Many of the tools and processes used in companies are questionable if they are not directly attributable to results. Skype, email, extremely long meetings, working late. Ultimately, none of this helps the company by itself. More of a focus on results versus FaceTime or a quick response on Skype or email could be a breakout change in an organization. What about fake agile? Oh man. Is your company doing a cargo cult agile? Does this process accomplish nothing but burn hours of developers' time in meetings while you talk about burn down charts, story points, and use lots of other process buzzwords? I have a feeling a lot of people can relate to that. And I feel like Agile itself is incentivized to have you do a fake version of it, because they just want to sell you whatever products. All right, so competent team members. It should go without saying that you need competent team members at your organization to be successful. Competency doesn't mean elite schooling or elite code, though it means the ability and desire to perform tasks as part of a team. Unified commitment. Do you have self-serving people on your team? Are they looking out only for themselves? Do they push a last-minute change to the database, then walk out the door without testing because it was 4:35? Do they need to catch the bus, not caring if they burned down production? This behavior is cancer that destroys your team quicker than anything else. You cannot have self-serving people on a high-performing team. They will ruin it. A collaborative climate. Is there an appropriate level of task conflict? Everyone cannot merely agree with each other because you won't catch mistakes. At the same time, you cannot have people yelling at each other. It needs to be a respectful environment where people are open and expect feedback. If the scale falls too far in either direction, you're doomed. Achieving this balance is easier said than done. Another example is the hiring process. Many companies complain about the inability to hire for diversity, and generally get good candidates. The real issue is that their hiring process is fugly. First, the company flatters candidates to apply. Then they waste their time with bespoke, irrelevant tests. Then they haze them with a round of interviews that have the worst predictive value than random. Then they ghost the candidate and don't give them any feedback. They lie and say they're trying to hire people when they have a broken process. They then yell on social media about how hard it is to engage diverse or any candidate. The reason you cannot hire is your process is fugly. And I don't know. Oh, yeah. No, it does. F-U-G-L-Y. So it's an acronym that stands for flatter. I don't know where the U came from, but then it's waste. Then it's haze. No, it's not. Treat people with respect, and you will get respect. The connection will manifest itself in being able to retain many great employees who have been needlessly disregarded by a hiring practice that optimizes for the wrong thing. Standards of excellence. The next step is a significant challenge for organizations. Most IT professionals work very hard, but could improve their standards of excellence and craftsmanship. One other way of stating this is to say that a higher degree of self-discipline is required. Higher standards for writing software, testing, and deploying are necessary. More stringent measures are required for reading the documentation on new technologies before they deploy. One example is the software life cycle. At every stage, higher standards are necessary. Write a technical overview and create a diagram before work starts. It is important to never release code that hasn't been through a proper DevOps life cycle. In terms of infrastructure, best practices need to be followed at many steps. Whether a Zookeeper configuration, EC2 storage configuration, or Mongo or serverless, every single component in the technology stack needs to be revisited and looked at for best practice compliance. Many situations exist where documentation stated a proper way to configure an element, but was never read. It would be safe to assume over 50% of the technology stacks at many companies are still improperly configured despite significant technology improvements. And that's honestly, I would say that might even get worse with ChatGPT, because now you're ignoring the official doc and you're just doing what ChatGPT says. And, it's not what the doc says, so it's not the right way to configure it. Please note that I am making a clear distinction between working long hours, nights, and weekends versus being highly disciplined at work and following standards of excellence. There are too many nights and weekends worked and not enough discipline by an order of magnitude in the software industry. It would be a grave mistake to understand how significant the lack of standards and controls is versus merely telling someone to work longer and harder. Finally, there needs to be a higher standard for gathering quantitative data when recommending strategic directions for many companies. The lack of any real quantitative analysis of migrating to a new data center or pursuing whales speaks to a lack of discipline and process for many in management. It simply isn't good enough to have an opinion, often stated as a fact by a member of a management team, without having the data to back it up. Yeah, and that's the highest paid person's opinion thing. Management needs highest standards. So management needs high standards. Everyone in the company can see when data, not opinion, hierarchy, aggression, or a desire for commission is used to make decisions. Right, and they can also see it when data is not used properly. It's easy to manipulate and distort data, so it's a little bit harder to see through that than just giving an opinion and not caring what anyone else's is. But if you're not using data at all, that's really bad. But it doesn't stop with just using data. You have to make sure you're using the data correctly. External support and recognition. Historically, there have been some real issues with external support and recognition for DevOps professionals. A readily evident example is being on call. Things have improved dramatically in the tech world, but even today, many people on pager duty are not recognized for how hard they work and how challenging it is to be on call. At many organizations, there appears to be no tangible reward for working hard, such as volunteering to be on call. And I would even go further to say, not only is there no reward for doing that, there are clear punishments. If anything, there is including pay. You could end up being paid less for doing that because you're now classified into a different sort of department or job role. You're the technician now and not the engineer. All the engineers are out getting free dinners somewhere in Miami. If anything, there is a clear precedent that shirking your duty could get you promoted because you were crafty enough, to get out of the lower status work. So by self-sacrificing, you're now associating yourself with a lower tier, and oh man. Which, I mean, it's so destructive. Like, you have to know how things work at the lowest levels. In the case of one employee I worked with, he said it wasn't smart, his words, to agree to be on call. He refused to go on call when he was in engineering. And as such, he got to do other things. He got to do things that were valued more. Shirking his duty then led to a promotion, right? Because now he's doing the work of these higher level people, and he's not doing this low level work and associating himself with these low level job titles. It is challenging to ask for extraordinary contributions when leaders show below average commitment and below average integrity. Yeah. I'm going to say another thing that doesn't speak to my personal experience. There are even situations where the leaders, they pride themselves on the fact that everyone does the low-level jobs, and there's no job that is at a lower tier. All the jobs are really important. When it comes to checking in mail, our principal engineer does that. The people at the company do that, and that's the kind of culture we have. Is yes, we have low-level interns checking in the mail. That's their primary duty when they start, but it's not because that is not an important job. It's one of the most important jobs because it sets up the sales department for success. It sets up everything else for success, to have that equipment come in and be labeled properly and managed properly. So it's not a, it's at the beginning of the work pipeline. So it's a very important thing. So everyone does it. The principal engineer, the CEO will check in the mail. Well, checking in the mail for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It's like, wait a minute. That sounded nice when you were saying that, but it doesn't appear to be the case. All right, so another example of a lack of external support is when one department drops the hard tasks on another. They commonly say, this is DevOps, this isn't my job. I have seen sales engineering teams set up many environments, a data center environment, a Rackspace environment, AWS environment. They continuously page the people on call, even though they hadn't set these environments up. When the sales engineer confronts this problem, he mentions he is in sales and this wasn't his job. Engineering didn't have access to the machines he had set up. They were misconfigured and paging people. The clear message here is don't be a sucker and get stuck on call. The smart people shirk this responsibility and delegate it to the low status suckers. Yeah, so what's the solution to this though? Yet another example, because this is a game theoretic situation too. Yet another example of a lack of, like, is he telling you to just go against the grain and doing that? Because he's established here that's a recipe for disaster. You're going to be a technician when everyone else is an engineer. You're going to get paid half of what they get paid for doing 4 times the work. Yet another example is a lack of external support. Yet another example of a lack of external support is when I was working at a company where customer data was deleted accidentally. A sales engineer initially misconfigured the machine without enough storage to support the customer's desired retention period. The responsibility, though, of continually cleaning up the data was in the hands of DevOps, the suckers. I want to say one thing quick too here is, like, I think one thing that's not brought up as much as it needs to be is entrepreneurial efforts. Because I mean, we can all think of these in environments, and the answer isn't to just do the work of the technicians and then somehow magically not fall into the same trap that has been laid there for decades. I feel like a really good answer is entrepreneurship. Like, what's going wrong, you know how to fix it, so try to build your own environment that is better. Like, you'll probably find a niche, a way to fit into the market. You don't have to be the biggest company out there, but all you have to do is do things well, and you can find some place to plug in. And there's all kinds of books written about just doing your own startup entrepreneurial efforts. So that's just kind of, I feel like it's a good place to let people think about that, because it's like, okay, you're telling me all these problems, what's the solution to just not fall into the same trap everyone else has fallen into? How is that possible? It's like, well, if you know what the answers are, and you never act to implement them, like, of course things are going to go bad. So I think entrepreneurial efforts are the answer to a lot of these problems. The maintenance of the machine required running dangerous Unix commands multiple times a day and often in the middle of the night. Unsurprisingly, one member of the just alias them. One member of the DevOps team alias them. What the heck? Of the DevOps team mistyped one of the commands and deleted the customer data. Alias the command. The sales engineer got angry and refused to let the customer know. Instead, he attempted to force the DevOps engineer to call the customer and perform a mea culpa. And I'm not sure what that is. I think it's to convince the customer that it wasn't done intentionally. Yeah. I was right.
The phrase mea culpa is Latin for through my fault. It's used to acknowledge an error or wrongdoing that is one done fault, often with a sense of personal responsibility or guilt. When someone performs a mea culpa, they are essentially confessing to a mistake and typically expressing remorse.
Right.
This can be done publicly or privately and is often associated with asking for forgiveness. The term is widely used in contexts where accountability and admittance of error are emphasized.
Okay, so yeah, they just wanted them to give an apology. It is problematic that companies have weak external support, and management has allowed individuals to behave in a way that is not supportive. This behavior sends a clear message that the administration will not tackle the tough problems like addressing immature or unprincipled behavior, and instead will shift it to DevOps. I'll advance the bookmark there. I'll delete the old bookmark and then delete the bug bookmark that rebuilds itself for some reason. Yep, so it's right here. Alright, so the next one is principled leadership. There have been some great examples of principled leadership at companies I have worked at, as well as some unfortunate cases. Larson and LaFast mentioned that a transformative leader establishes trust through positioning, assuring that the leader's behavior exemplifies the ideals and course of the vision. A CTO, for example, was on call for months during a crisis to show solidarity with everyone. This situation is an example of not asking someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. Responsibility occurs when it is a personal sacrifice and inconvenient. Another excellent example of principled leadership was with a product manager and the front-end team. She required that the front-end team use the ticket system and led by example, actively working with the queue and culling it. As a result, UX engineers learned this skill and how important it was for planning. She could have just said, use the system, but instead used it herself. This situation... Right. This situation has led to real success that can be measured quantitatively. The ticket turnover rate, which the product manager closely monitored, improved. On the other hand, some of the practices that startup CEOs promoted were unprincipled. Some would frequently send emails out about people needing to work late, then go home at 4 p.m. Teams pick up on this behavior, and some of these repercussions remain forever. Another way to phrase this would be to call this inauthentic leadership. I have seen situations where a DevOps team was harassed, and it was quite damaging. This harassment was created by saying the team didn't work hard or was incompetent. This can be particularly damaging if it comes from someone who often leaves early and refuses to do challenging engineering tasks. Harassment is terrible enough, but when it comes from a legitimate slacker who is allowed to terrorize people, it becomes insufferable. Larson and LaFast also mention that any team that rated itself as low performing in these three categories didn't last long. So a clear elevating goal, competent team members, and standards of excellence. I'm not going to add that because it's already a part of this. I will include that in the description. So I'm going to advance the bookmark because I'm looking at stopping this video. I'm probably at the hour mark. That's typically as much as I can do at a time. Yeah, so I'm getting there. Okay, so now we're talking about interviews. I think there's probably at least another chapter after this. There might be citations. Man, how long is this book? Well, we've got 500. We've got another 15,000 pages. Okay, the answer is it's very, very, very long. Okay, so once I get to the index, I can stop. So that's about 90%. So, yeah, I'm pretty much close to the end of this book. So, I think I'm at a logical. Yeah, because all of this is just the index. So it's So like the official book end is. Oh no, that's where my bookmark is. So. Yeah, I don't need to read out loud the whole index, So I'll definitely read the interviews, and then I'll stop at the index. So this is a good stopping point for this video, and then I can put in the description the 8 characteristics of an effective team. All right, so that's it for this video. Stay tuned for hopefully, which is the last video in this series. This is the last chapter in the book, chapter 16, and they're going to be interviewing I think the authors of the book. Is Noah on here? I'm not sure who these people are that they're interviewing. I don't see Noah Gift here, and I'm not sure if this is still from the perspective of Noah Gift. Yeah, I don't know who. I mean, we'll probably figure out who these people are over the course of the interviews. And these will be people I can follow on my LinkedIn too, following that role. All right, so that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.